can kind of hop around in.
I don't honestly remember. We've been to every single park up there and they all kind of look the same.
I think it's the park that's connected to Whitefish Dunes.
Yeah, it's on the
East side.
Yeah.
Or the rough side. Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock.
So who's up here?
Good evening, everyone. Have we started recording?
That's Paul saying.
We do have Paul on here, so he should be recording.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Then I just got it. Go ahead.
I'll call the meeting to order then. Seeing it is Monday, September 21st. I'm going to call the September 21st Village Board meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Horton.
Here.
Stitch.
Here.
Colleague.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Carpenter. Lish.
Here.
Jacobson. Here.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the library board chairperson now.
We'll call the library board meeting to order. Can I have a roll call for the library board?
Nelson.
Here.
Shuda.
Here.
Data.
Here.
Goplin.
Here.
Bergstrom.
Here.
Glish.
Here.
And Severson.
Here.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item 5, I'm going to turn the new library building status over to Jennifer Way.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm going to just start with the copy of the Memorandum of Understanding is in your packet, just for your reference. This is agreement that the library board and the village board were working on before I started, but signed about 2 years ago, just kind of outlining the process for building a new library and details about financing, contracts, and all those nuances of getting the library built. If you go to page 3, we are on step number 4 right now, conducting the capital campaign. And step 5 is a really critical step before we will be able to move the project forward. So we'll probably be talking about that at a joint meeting around the new year. This is more just as a reference to make sure everyone kind of remembers, since it's been a long time since we started the discussion about this process. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, then I will go ahead and move on to update on fundraising efforts. Just a first event highlight. On Saturday, the 26th, which is this coming Saturday, we will be doing a Pottery and Art Sale in in Kaiser Park, right across from the library, from 10 to 4. We have an Oregon artist Mitch Sigmund, who donated lots of pottery for us that we will be selling, and 100% of the proceeds benefit the new library. So we'd love to see you there. I'm also going to share just one example of a community member really coming forward to support our project. We had a 5-year-old named Camden who participated in the library virtual run with her family, and she and her 3-year-old brother hosted a lemonade stand and were able to donate almost $200 to the new library. So that's just one really neat example of community members coming forward to really show that this project is important to them. I'm going to turn it over to Randy for a second, and he's going to share another example to share with you tonight.
All right, be happy to. So on behalf of Jennifer, Jenny, myself, and the steering committee, we are very pleased to announce publicly that we have received a new anonymous gift of $500,000 for the new library project. So we're very, very excited about that. First time we've said it publicly. We got it last week.
So that puts our new total at 1.88 million raised so far for the campaign. And we're going to continue our efforts through the end of the year to raise everything we can, but just want to take a moment to thank the donor of that $500,000, but also Camden and everybody in the community who supported the project in any capacity, whether it be through a financial contribution or support in any other way. We really appreciate you, and you really make Oregon a wonderful place to live. So thank you, everyone.
Jennifer, would this be an okay time to kind of ask, kind of explain about the Mega Match Challenge? Just kind of put that out there. Would that be okay if I talked about that for a second? Please do. So what we are hoping to do with this fantastic $500,000 anonymous donation is put out a call to the community to match that $500,000. We're calling it the Mega Match Challenge. And what we want to do is just ask the community to continue their great support, but kind of take this as a challenge that somebody has really stepped up and believes in this, and ask them to believe in it as well. And to try to match that $500,000 so that we can hopefully raise our $4 million that we're hoping to get to by the end of the year. So if you have any friends who have donated, or if you've already donated, we would love any support you can give us. So thank you.
So Jennifer, can we also mention that in addition to the Pottery and Art Sale on Saturday, that is another day of giving as well. So folks can either drop off a donation at the Pottery or Art Sale, or go to the library website and make a donation electronically.
And just to clarify too, we promote special days of giving to really generate excitement and interest and build awareness about the campaign, but we do take donations at any time. So if somebody misses the day of giving, they can certainly contribute, and they can contact me, and I can contact me at the library, and I'm happy to tell them more about that. Are there any questions on any of those items? So 5C is just discussing rescheduling the joint meeting. We are hoping to have a joint meeting after our campaign time is over, to just check in with the village board and library board together to discuss where the project is at, and move on to number 5 in the Memorandum of Understanding, setting our project budget and such before we move forward. We had originally talked about doing that in December. However, end of the year giving it's a really good time for donors to make gifts. And so we prefer, if possible, to do that meeting in January to allow any of the end of the year contributions to be counted in our campaign total. Mike, I don't know if we need a vote on that.
No, I just want to make sure that's okay with people's schedules.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Why don't you move on to item 6?
Sure. So this is just our first budget discussion. Starting in 2018, the village started having 2 budget discussions with the library. So we'll be back again in September with all the other in October with all the other departments. But this is kind of giving you just kind of a preview of where we're headed. So starting with the goals and accomplishments, the fundraising has been a very main focus for our library, very time consuming, but very important for us. We've also switched to a new computer system, and we've also, like many other departments, have increased our focus on diversity and inclusion. So we partnered with the Senior Center earlier this year, back in February, to do a training for our team. And like other departments, we've really spent a lot of time and energy adapting our services to COVID and the challenges and opportunities that that presents. One of the things we've done recently was add an external wireless access point to really improve the free Wi-Fi we offer outside of our building. So community members can come to our parking lot and get free Wi-Fi. We had a young man using the internet right outside of our building this morning. Jeff just put in some picnic tables for people to be able to utilize that service. We've also found that our space challenges are a little bit exacerbated by COVID. So we converted our meeting room into additional staff work area, just because our staff spaces are really small and don't really allow for social distancing very well. Like many other departments too, we've had to modify our workflow almost entirely, kind of coming up with a procedure for curbside pickup for patrons to get materials. So a lot of things have changed, but we're still trying to fulfill our mission and get those services to the community just in new and different ways. Are there any questions on our goals and accomplishments? I just kind of highlighted a few. Okay, so I'm going to move on. The next thing on the agenda is the 202 fund budget. That one is a little bit simpler. Most of that funding is coming from donations, except for library impact fees, which is funds generated from building permits, just like any other department impact fee. And that's budgeted on an annual basis. And then those funds could be available to the library for capital expenditures like the new building. Like other departments, the interest income that we're expecting for next year will be down quite a bit, just because of the interest rate changes over our previous rate that we had been giving. One thing I do want to highlight is the buildings account on this budget. We have $600,000 planned for 2021. The CIP has the borrowing of the $6 million village contribution for the new library in 2022. And this is a subset of the $10 million of the project. So this would pay for the services to allow the architects to continue taking our plan from where they are now to the point where they would be ready to go out to bid. And so it's not additional money, but it's just money that would be used next year. If those funds aren't used, they would then be postponed to 2022. And of course, we wouldn't use any of these funds without village board agreement about moving the project forward. So that's all I have on the 202 account. Jeff, or Elise, can you go forward about 2 more pages? There we go. Thank you. So Mike and Lisa asked, prior to my starting, the library had kind of a step plan to increase library staffing levels to the level that was expected for a new library. And Mike and Lisa asked us to revisit that and kind of put forth a plan. So this plan was a little different. Before COVID hit, we were hoping to ask for some additional staff hours in 2021. But with the current situation, we decided to postpone those staff hours till 2022. So right now we're at about 11.9 FTE, and we're hoping to add some new positions in 2022, and then 2023 to get us to the levels that we would expect to need to be for the new library. These are very preliminary, so every time we have a position open, we will revisit this plan to make sure we're best using our resources. We estimated the circulation and page position hours based on Wanakee Public Library. They found their use increased 30% in circulation and 25% in visits. And so since those positions work very closely with people checking items in and out, that's how we used projected the number of hours we would need in addition. The other thing I should note is that Public Works does help us with things like mowing and building maintenance duties. And if they should, if we should change how we want to approach that in the future, we would need to revisit that in terms of the budget. This isn't just a guess. We both looked at what our staff needs for our different departments are. And then if we go to the next page on this, we also looked at current staffing levels at other Dane County libraries. So we looked at those by population, by circulation, by FTE, and then by building size. And DeForest, I believe, is on there as a pretty good comparable in terms of both building size relative to where we'd like to get. Circulation, they're a little, they check out fewer items than we do, but their population is also very close to us. And right now they're at about 13.15 FTE. So we're trying to aim a little bit larger than that just because our circulation is higher. But that's kind of some of the checking. We used other libraries as kind of a benchmark to make sure that our needs were rooted in what was realistic in our area. Are there any questions on the preliminary staff plan?
I'll have a question, Jennifer, and it's
Yeah,
actually
Jerry.
it's for Mike. Mike, we'll get to revisit this again at budget time, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so if any of the trustees, or actually if anyone thinks about this budget and decides they have a question, of course you can always call Jennifer or Mike, but you can bring it up at budget time, which is next month, right, Mike?
Yep, correct. Yep.
Yeah, so think it over. If you have questions, write them down, bring it up again.
Thank you, Jerry. And just to confirm that we are not asking for any additional staff hours in this coming budget cycle. This is more of a kind of a long-term view, but we still welcome any questions as well. Thank you.
Well, if no one has any questions, I'm just going to thank Jennifer for cooperating with staff and working with staff to keep the library budget as affordable as possible in the interim time before the new library is done.
Thank you, Jerry. We do have just two more quick sections, if you don't mind, Jerry. We have
Go right ahead.
D&E.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so for the 203 budget, those are the items that come from revenue and county or village tax funds. So this one is a little bit more the nuts and bolts of our operations. Our county revenue for next year should be really strong. Both of those, both Dane County and adjacent county revenue is going to be up. But the big question is revenue for things like library fines and fees and copies, just because we're not really sure what it's going to look like in terms of people coming in the building and how often. We did decrease some of those budget items a little bit. For salaries, we did add a new position this year, although we do have some positions we kept vacant, like our summer LTE positions, and we have a part-time position that's still on furlough. But we did start a new 18-hour-a-week position, and so that position was supposed to start in March. So some of the increases to salaries are making that position year-long. The other big increase to the top is professional services, and that is just annual costs for all the services the South Central Library System provides. It includes another hour of Matt's time, and then we added some laptops for staff to be able to work remotely. And so that adds a little bit to our operating costs, as well as the external wireless access points. Most of the other accounts, we really tried to keep our increases basically as low as we possibly could. At the bottom in the library building section, the wages are for the help that Public Works provides us. So we reimburse their time for that. For contractual services, our cleaning contract is going up a little bit more significantly next year. So that's the increase in that account. And then the final increase for property insurance, which is quite a substantial increase, was based on the actual increased costs we had this year. So we're just adjusting the budget for next year for that. Those funds are never known ahead of time. The last account on the next page that I'll point out is the Whackman trust account, and that is just for interest income that's generated on a trust fund that was given to somebody in their estate plan. And so we are just reflecting the budget to show the interest that's generated in an annual fiscal year. The principal of this cannot be used per the trust. That's all I have for today, Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Any board members have any questions? Okay, hearing none, I have one final question. Is there, and forgive me if we've already discussed this in a previous meeting, because by asking this question, I'll illustrate that I forgot about the answer you gave then. But the fundraising consultant, how's he doing?
There's no funds budgeted for next year for that purpose. We are engaging services through the end of this year. We took a break. We took a break from March to I think July for COVID. We kind of took a step back from fundraising to give our community kind of space to adjust. But we did rehire services recently to help finish our campaign.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jerry.
And thank you, Randy, for your hard work on fundraising too. So, okay, if you have nothing else, Jennifer, I believe that we're done with your board now. And well, next meeting is Monday, October 19th at 5 p.m. So
That's correct. Yep.
Yep. So if you want to adjourn your board, Jennifer, go right ahead.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is Carrie.
There's a second.
Second by Laura.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we're
Thank you.
adjourned, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, library board.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 9, which is community input. And this part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items not listed on the county board or the village board agenda. Under the open meetings law, this section of the agenda allows the board to receive information and to ask questions of a presenter and to facilitate a better understanding of the information. 15 minutes is provided for this. So is anyone from the public interested in speaking at this time? All right. Hearing no one, we'll move on to item 10, which is public appearances. And item A is a discussion with the Oregon School District. And I'm going to welcome Superintendent Leslie Bergstrom. And Leslie, it's all yours.
Very nice of you. Thank you very much. And I know that Elise, you were planning to allow me to share the screen. Do I already have that capability?
You should, but let me know if it's not working.
Well, it's bright green, so I bet I do. So.
Okay. We'll hope for the best then.
Yeah, I just have to wait till you're not sharing it and then it will allow me to.
Okay.
All right.
I assume you're ICB too.
LCB too. Yeah,
LCB.
And sorry about that. You're right. I should sorry everybody. I do this every day on Google Meet, and I don't do it every day on Zoom. So I'm just getting used to this. But thank you for letting me be here today. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to answer questions that you might have and to establish sort of a common knowledge base for all of us as we move forward in the discussion about the Donaldson property and future plans for it. So I have a few slides for you, and I apologize if you already know some of the things on the slide. I'm sure you do. None of this is brand new to you. I just really like to think about how I sort of want to tell the story. You know, how did we get to where we are, and what are the important considerations as we move forward? So I'll just kick it off. And the first thing I think is important to talk about is the why. You know, why are we even talking about the potential for building on the property that I'll refer to for this evening as the Donaldson property, but we'd have to come up with a new name sometime in the future. And part of that is because of the resident student growth projections. Now, we started working with Mark Roffers. He is a consultant related to population growth, and he's worked with various communities in Dane County. As a matter of fact, almost all of them. And we worked with him back in 2017 to talk about, all right, now what kind of growth should we be preparing for as we move forward in the next several years? Well, it was a very rigorous study, and I learned a lot. It was fascinating. But one of the things that came up that none of us were prepared for was the significant rate of growth projected. 2,000 students by the year 2030, 2,000 additional students, which means we have a district of a little over 4,000, so that would be a 50% growth increase. And we have all kinds of information on that on our website, but it was that growth increase that made us think we needed to be proactive in our planning. And I believe what I just mentioned is probably somewhat in alignment with some of the work that you've already done related to a study commissioned for the village, because if I remember reading in the Observer right, you were expecting a really significant growth rate by 2035 too. So I think the separate studies have some levels of alignment in them, which is always reassuring when you're talking about projections into the future. So knowing that we had this potential increase in students, we also did a capacity study. What could we currently do with the buildings that we have, and how many students could we serve and serve well with our current capacity? So we did that study, and that led to really considerable discussion related to how would we configure schools moving forward in order to best take advantage of existing buildings, and then have a really thoughtful process as far as how we move forward. So the decision we made was really about a two-phase growth process. And the first phase would be to build a K-6 elementary school that would open in the 2020 school year. Because when we received the projections, Mark Roffers was very clear on the fact that he feels that our area is, ripe for a lot of growth. Only there are things that could happen that could slow it down or speed it up. And so we felt that we had better be ready in case it was exactly as he had expected. He thought we'd have a giant increase in 2020. And in reality, I think it's going to take another year or two for that increase to really hit us full force. So that is why we pushed really, really hard to have that K-6 school ready in 2020, just in case those population numbers were spot on, not only in number, but in year. So, as you know, we had a 2018 referendum, and then worked like crazy with our architect and our builder to ensure that we'd be ready with this beautiful K-6 school by 2020. Well, our second phase, our next phase, will be when we want to build our second 6-8 school. Because right now we've really improved the overcrowding issues that existed at our elementary schools and at RCI, our 5th and 6th grade building. But we've done nothing to touch the large number of students that are currently at our 7-8 building. So part of our plan, what we're doing next is making sure we're meeting the needs of that group of students too. So we want to build a 6-8 school, reconfigure our existing elementary schools and RCI to become K-5s, and then have 2 6-8 middle schools. And you'll note that there hasn't been discussion of the high school, and that's because the previous referendum really helped us be ready for what the future holds as far as the high school. So as we were looking for sites for the new K-6 school, we were also keeping in mind what might phase 2 look like and what would potentially be good sites for phase 2, which is the middle school. Well, that's when we get to some of the things that we would be looking for related to the site. the current, I don't know if I would say recommendation, but it's something that a lot of planners work upon, and that is for middle school, you'd be looking at in general a site that had 20 acres plus an additional acre for every 100 students. So if we were to build a middle school for 600 students, for example, then we'd want approximately 26 acres. So we knew we had to have a pretty substantially sized site to be able to do what we wanted to do. And we were also had been from the very beginning exploring the idea of a campus possibility. Is there are there options out there that would allow us to perhaps be ready for the next level, whatever phase 3 might bring, in case in another decade we are ready for another elementary school? So we're always keeping that in mind throughout that process too. In addition to some of the other things that we wanted to be able to be helpful with related to the community's needs, and I'll get to that in a moment. We were also looking for a somewhat central location, because if you take a look at our map, and I'll show it to you in a second, you'll see that we have an elementary in the north, an elementary in the south, and everything else is clustered in the center around the village. And so when we were thinking about phase 2 in a middle school, we really liked the idea of bringing in our middle level kids into the center, into someplace nearer to the village where the other schools are located, because we'd have our elementary schools at either end, and we'd continue to bring them in as they got older, just like at the high school, which right in the center of town. So cost is a significant factor. You know, we paid a significant amount per acre for our site in Terra Vesa, and so we were really looking for a possibility that would allow us to be pretty thrifty with what we were willing to spend for land. And when we were examining land at multiple locations in conjunction with our search for a K6 site, we were really hoping to find an option for phase 2 that allowed us to pay less per acre, because we really wanted to be thoughtful and as fiscally responsible as possible. And the Donaldson process, our property, was by far the lowest cost per acre. And it also met that central location piece. It would allow all of our kids to be near the center of, near the village, near the high school, both of the middle schools, right around a similar location. And then it was also pretty large. It was well over the 20 acres. I think it's about 107. So that means we would have the room to expand on that site if the need arises in the future with more elementary students coming into the area. So we saw a lot of benefit in that particular site. And in addition, with the size of the site and the location of the site, we also saw a lot of overall community benefit. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So you can see when you take a look at this super rough basic outline of what it might look like, it's a very conceptual piece, but you can see it's very much in alignment with the Fitchburg's comprehensive service plan that was just amended, just recently amended. And you know that from reading Ms. Cruz's memorandum, but was just recently amended to have this piece of property only be zoned for institutional, which means there would be nothing on the property other than school-related buildings or fields. So I hope that is reassuring, that you know that this property really truly is just for school and just for things that are related to school. And as you can see, when you look at it, the site contains many benefits to Oregon School District families. And the majority of those families are also Oregon Village residents. And that's why our interests tend to coincide quite often. So you can see up toward, or at the southern part of the property nearest the village, that would be the site of the proposed middle school. And you also see that there's a connected pool. Now, of course, before we would decide anything related to how many fields would be on the property or the size of the pool, etc., we would make sure that we were doing a study related to the facilities that you're already building. I know you have a lot planned in that area in the next few years. So we would only be looking to what would be appropriate for the next level of growth, and how could this site meet the needs of the families in addition to what you are already planning. And that would, one of those things would be a pool. I know that we hear quite frequently about how heavily utilized our pool is, and I'm sure you get a lot of that feedback from people too, and how much people would appreciate being able to have another pool in the area, so that they're not driving all over to other communities to utilize pool time. And frankly, that's what's happening now, because it's such a popular facility. You'll see baseball fields, softball field, several soccer fields, because we know that's important for the community. And should we need it in the future, there's also room for another elementary school. You'll also see down at the bottom here that this is North Perry. So it's an extension of North Perry all the way through this area to North Main Street. And I believe this is Mary Hill here, in case you're trying to orient yourself as far as where all of this is taking place. Also note that anything that would be planned on this land, which of course would have to go through many, many processes, probably a few years of processes, but what would be planned would be very much in line with what you are hoping for related to the village, as far as bike paths and walking paths. I mean, we would follow your lead as far as what you are planning related to that. So, oh, and there's you can see the map here, and sort of the geographical symmetry, somebody called it the other day. The elementary schools on either end, and then the rest of the schools located toward the center. So how we view this, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it too, but what we're hoping is that by building a middle school here and having related amenities such as the pool and fields, that we'd be able to build on the plan that you already have moving forward for meeting the needs of recreational facilities within the village. And with the additional benefit of being able to spread that cost over a broader tax base, because we would have the entire school district to help to shoulder the burden of that type of facility. It would also, and this harkens back to my days as a softball mom. I don't know how many of you have spent many a weekend at baseball or softball or soccer fields or whatever it happens to be. But when my kids would play somewhere else, I'd go into a new town, and not only would I, watch their games, but in between, sometimes there are 2-3 hours in between, I would look for a place to have lunch. Sometimes I would look for a place to buy groceries quickly before I had to head back out of town. So if we had lots of visitors for these additional amenities, because they would be part of, our public use plan, the visitors would be coming to town. And I hope that the visitors would be coming to town and also, enjoying some of the things that Oregon has to offer related to restaurants and stores. And then another benefit I really think is a particularly nice one is that it would be a really attractive feature for the entrance. It's yet another nice way to introduce new people to Oregon. I know that when I first got a job here many years ago, and I was trying to explain to my mom where to get off the highway to get into Oregon, it would have been a lot easier if I'd been able to say, well, take the exit by all the beautiful fields, you'll see the school off to the side. So I think there's a lot of advantages to having it as a lovely front door for our community. Oh, and then there's the other plus too, that, and I am no traffic study expert, so of course a traffic study would have to be a part of that process. But it seems like it would be a benefit to be able to route some traffic through an extension of North Perry as opposed to Netherwood and East Richards. So of course a traffic study would take care of that and would highlight any benefits that were existing. But that seems to a layperson like myself like it might be a benefit. So what does all this mean regarding timing? Well, first of all, a referendum is required. We could not move forward without something like that happening. This purchase of the property was simply a first step because of the fact that the timing was exactly perfect to move forward, and we know that there are a lot of hoops to jump through before anything happens, and we want to make sure that we're in alignment with you and that we're not doing anything that you don't see as valuable to the district. But for the referendum, we really would look for an election year that would draw a lot of voters, because it's really important that there are voices heard in the process. So we'd want some big election years. So either 22, the gubernatorial, or 24, the next presidential election. And then once that happens, it's probably at least 2 years to actually build a school after a referendum is passed. So as you can see from this, there's nothing happening that's imminent. We're just about planning for the future. And so we want to make sure that we have a really solid partnership with the Village of Oregon and the City of Fitchburg as we plan forward, because we know our kids are going to need another school within the next 6 or 7 years, 6, 7, 8 years. So we want to make sure we're ready for them when it happens. And what that means is we're just looking at what might the next steps be. And I understand that after tonight, you may have a lot of questions. And so I'm happy to come back and answer more questions. Nothing needs to happen now, other than one small first step could be the authorization of Matt Dregney to work on a cost reimbursement agreement with, of course, the Oregon School District paying for his time. Because we know that you would want to know ahead of time all that we would be willing to pay for. And we know that we want the development of the school district property to be cost neutral to the village. We know that this is something that's on us, and all we're asking for from you is, the beginning to explore what it might look like and what type of costs might be involved, and how we could come to a mutually beneficial agreement, because we serve the same community. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity yet to read the memorandum that Elise Cruz wrote. I was very grateful for it. I think it helped me understand all that is ahead of me as far as the complicated approval process that I know will be over the next couple of years. So thank you, Elise, for putting that together. It was, I think, probably helpful for many of us. And now, I'm open to whatever questions you may want to ask about all of this.
Thank you, Superintendent Bergstrom. I guess I would ask the board members if they have any questions at this time. Okay, I've got Leslie. I've got a couple questions, and well, actually, one is a statement, and then I do have a question.
Sure.
The statement is: would you please go highlight why you're doing this now in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a impending budget crisis?
Sure. Well, most of it is because we know that it will take many years to put it all together. And we don't want to end up sort of behind our planning process. It would be best if we ended up, if we were prepared ahead, so that by the time we needed the facilities, we were ready, as opposed to needing them and then engaging in a multi-year process. Personally, I'd rather not have trailers at the middle school. I'd like to be ahead of it so that we don't end up going down that road. So that is why we're getting the ball started now, but we do recognize that it'll take several years to put all of it together.
Thank you. My question is, I didn't hear any plans for dealing with stormwater or runoff from the site.
Right. Well, I would certainly defer to Elise because she knows more than I do, but I believe that's part of the required process that Fitchburg would put us through.
Okay.
And before I read her memo, I did not even know what CARPC was, but now I do. And now I know that it exists for the exact reason that you mentioned, that we would be involved in that process.
Okay. Well, thank you, Superintendent Bergstrom. I will guess I'll move on to item 2, which is Village Planner Elise Cruz summarizing the City of Fitchburg's development review process for the school site.
Jerry, I had a question too for Dr.
Oh, okay.
Bergstrom.
Sure.
I was just wondering, because of COVID-19 and, you know, it's been a real game changer in a lot of things. I was wondering if the school district had any plans to reevaluate the rate of growth or projected growth rather, like, you know, just so that you have a more accurate timeline for this project.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Amanda. And while I'm in, you know, I have regular contact with Mr. Rockers. One of the things that he did say when we did the study is that barring some major economic crisis, this is the path forward, right? Well, I would say we're probably in a crisis or are right about to be in one. So I do think it would be wise before we we certainly wouldn't go to referendum without another study. So thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, well, you can always ask them as we're moving forward too. So Elise Cruz, would you summarize the Fitchburg development review process for the school site?
Sure, and I will navigate back to
And by the way,
my
Elise
memo
is,
here.
yeah, Elise is the village planner. So,
Thanks, Jerry.
yeah.
So hopefully you all got a chance to read the memo, but in summary, Mike asked me to reach out to Sonia Crusell, who's the Director of Planning in Fitchburg, and ask them sort of for a summary of their anticipated review process for this site. And she responded to me with a couple of different steps in that process. The first being the need for the village to amend our urban service area through CARPC, the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, who oversees all expansions of you know, water and sewer infrastructure. So that would be a process that the village would probably have to take the lead on, but would be working in tandem with the school district and the city of Fitchburg to answer some of the questions and prepare some of the maps to go through that amendment process. And again, as Leslie mentioned, the cost for that time and preparing all those materials would be negotiated with the school district. After that urban service area is amended, then the sort of the site planning review process is handed over to Fitchburg, and those bullet points there, the comprehensive development plan, a certified survey map, rezoning, and then architectural design review for the site and the structures would be the probably, I would imagine, at least year-long process through Fitchburg to go through all of their steps, review, understand why the development is being done here, making sure there's no environmental concerns, stormwater concerns, traffic is reviewed, and the city is also committed to sharing, you know, any information that they can with the village that will be relevant to us in terms of, you know, connecting to our roads. Obviously, water doesn't, you know where the municipal boundaries are. So understanding how that's going to be managed on the site, and imagine we would be very involved in all of those site plan review meetings as well as those go forward with the city. But happy to answer any questions that I may or may not have the answers for. I can find the answers out for you, but I was glad to hear that I think we're on the same page with the city about all the things we would be concerned about looking at, and know that they're going to do a really good, thorough job in evaluating the site, making sure that it both meets all their requirements and fits well in with what the village's you know, plans and growth are on that side of town.
Okay. Thank you, Elise. Any questions from the board for Elise? Elise, I have a question. Is there a timetable for that review process for the school site on Fitchburg's end?
So for Fitchburg's part, just we didn't really I didn't ask that specific question, but just based on this process and what she listed out, I would imagine it would probably be 8 to 12 months through Fitchburg, and the CARP seed process before that would probably take maybe 6 to 9 months as well. So several year process too.
Yep, very good. Very good. Again, any questions for Elise?
Jerry,
got
Amanda has a question.
Yeah, I've
Go
got
right
a
ahead.
question. Thanks.
Okay.
So I'm not sure who this is for, Elise, or maybe even Matt Dregney. So we're going to have an MOU with the school district. Then the village will probably have to have an MOU with the city of Fitchburg too, right? For some things, and I don't know if is it beneficial to have meetings with all three entities in the room to hammer that out, or how would this proceed? It feels very awkward to do it with one entity and then go with the other and then back to the first, and kind of as opposed to just having everybody in the room to proceed together. It feels like that would be a more efficient and cohesive way of doing things. How would this work?
Well, this is Matt. I'll give you my impression of what that looks like. And today, what I can say is it's not clear to me yet what agreements will ultimately be needed here. So there will certainly need to be an agreement between the school district and the village. Whether there will need to be an agreement between this village and the city of Fitchburg, I think is going to depend on how the village wants to approach this project. And for example, whether the village is willing to simply allow Fitchburg to review this project under its ordinances and not be involved in that process, or will the village choose to say that it will need to be involved in those in that process? And I don't know the answer to that yet. So the agreement that is before you tonight, I think, or the issue that's before you tonight is kind of a very preliminary issue, which is whether to authorize the preparation of a cost reimbursement agreement where the school district would reimburse the village for expenses that you incur, basically legal expenses, in preparing an initial cost reimbursement agreement where the school district would agree to cover expenses that you will run into in the next step of the process. The next step of the process would then get us into the question of what approach does the village want to take to this? What issues need to be addressed? Can everything be addressed in an agreement between the village and the school district, or will there need to also be an agreement with the city of Fitchburg? And I don't think we know the answer. I don't know the answer to those questions yet.
Yeah, I'm just envisioning something like, let's say we build the school, we have agreements and things, and then it's cold and a water main breaks. Well, that's on us to fix it, but we have to get permission from Fitchburg to, get it in under the cement and do stuff with their roads and it just seems like there has to be an ongoing relationship there that we're going to have to navigate. And so I don't know. I mean, it's complicated for sure. So this is just a cost reimbursement agreement between the village and the school district. But if it costs us money to have an MOU with Fitchburg between the Village of Oregon and the city of Fitchburg, that's also covered, that the school district would pay for that too?
Well, so my understanding is that, yeah, this cost reimbursement agreement will say that if we end up having to negotiate an agreement with the city of Fitchburg as part of this process, then the school district would be, paying for the expense of negotiating that agreement. So at least that's my understanding of what I need to do with this agreement. Well, that would be my intent, to draft it to cover all of those potential expenses. Not, again, without the village or the school district knowing yet today exactly what we're going to be having to do, how many things we're going to have to look at, what exactly the final relationship or agreements are going to be.
Right. And I saw Leslie nodding, so I think is that right?
Well,
Pretty
yeah,
much.
I think it's new territory for all of us. And so I'd say what's on the table tonight is just like the very initial little baby step into all of this, because there's still so much that we don't know, that this is just the beginning of exploring what it is we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
And I think
This is Matt. Let me just add a little bit to this. So, Amanda, you're right. I mean, there's some interesting questions that are a little different for us here, but one way to think about this is schools building a school in Fitchburg. Because it's in Fitchburg, Fitchburg would, in the ordinary course of events, have jurisdiction to deal with all of the zoning, stormwater management, all of those kinds of issues. The reason the village is a necessary party to this discussion at this point is the village is the entity that can provide water and sewer service to the property. And so one way to think about the village's role here is, well, we're like a public utility. That's what we are. We're a public utility. The school is saying, can you provide water and sewer service to us, even though we're outside your corporate limits? And so what I don't know is our role throughout this going to just be limited to we're a public utility and the only role we have to play here is to provide water and sewer service and figure out how that's going to get done? It may be that that's all we do, and we just have to deal with those issues. On the other hand, it may be that the village will say, you know what, there are some other things that we are concerned about that we want to have a voice in this process. And we talked at an earlier meeting about what those things might be. But I don't think tonight, so the agreement I would prepare would say, whatever the village board decides it needs to look at as part of this process, the school district is saying, yeah, we understand school village, you may need to look at those things. And if we do need to look at those and you incur some costs in that process, then the school district is prepared to cover those expenses. Sorry, that's it. Maybe a little redundant.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I think Corey, you still have a question?
I guess just a few comments. I guess I personally think that it is going to require, cooperation and involvement from all three parties for many different items. As much as this is in the jurisdiction of Fitchburg, there's a lot of things that need to be coordinated with Oregon. It will impact our residents more than Fitchburg residents. We have street connections, we have traffic. It's a lot closer to our residents than Fitchburg's. So I think we will need an MOU just to make sure that the concerns of our residents are addressed with this. I think there's also coordination, like Amanda had mentioned, for long-term maintenance responsibilities, who's going to do what and who's going to pay for, like Amanda mentioned, when a street needs to get ripped up and a water main replaced, who's paying to fix that. So I think all of those little things will just make it so we need to, have kind of a comprehensive agreement. I'm very much, the school district is a huge part of the village's identity. So I think, this is a win-win for everyone. And I think we need to work together on, coming up with an agreement that addresses everyone's concerns and makes everyone happy. So that's my viewpoint on this. And I think what the school district has brought forward with making this cost neutral to the village is very important. We're in a very difficult budgetary situation, and ultimately part of the reason why the property was so inexpensive was because of the lack of utilities. And if we're bringing those utilities there, I think ultimately it's only fair that the school district, pays for that, because ultimately they're improving the property to even make it usable by getting those utilities. So those are just my viewpoints on this. I look forward to working through all of the details, and it's going to take, quite a while. And there's a lot of things that we aren't even thinking about yet, but I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone else would like to contribute to this discussion? I have a question for Mike Grace.
Sure.
Mike, what Corey mentioned an MOU, and I think it's a good idea too. What are your thoughts on the MOU? What is the suggested, or if there is a suggested timetable for the MOU? I know tonight the recommended motion just mentions a cost reimbursement agreement. What are your thoughts on the MOU? Matter of fact, you or Matt, for that matter.
I think when Matt maybe answered that already, I think we'll be able to answer that question better if the board approves the recommended motion on the agenda to do the cost reimbursement agreement, because through that process, we're going to be talking to the school and probably to Fitchburg saying, what do we need? And then we'll be coming back to the board saying, we got through the process. We think we need an MOU. We don't need to, I think this process is going to help us get to that point, I hope.
Okay.
Yep.
Good thoughts, Mike. And Matt, one question for you regarding the motion. I'm almost positive, because I know how Mike works, that he got that $2,500 number from you.
Well, we discussed that number, and I told Mike that I thought that number gives us a fair amount of cushion. I don't expect it to cost $2,500.
Okay. All right.
But he thought it'd be better to ask for too much than too little.
Okay. Any final questions before we start talking about this motion? Corey,
Jared,
go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make the school district aware that, we're, from a timing perspective, there's a lot of stuff going on right now with budgeting. We're also looking at a hiring process for a new village administrator. So we have a lot of things that are tapping our time right now. So as you do, I'm sure as well. But, from a timing perspective, we're just going to have to, see what we can fit in. But it may take longer than any of us really want to, but it's just kind of the situation that we're in.
Very good. Anyone else? And I'll just remind everyone that I don't want to leave anyone out of this discussion, but I can only see half of the board on my screen. And I just looked in the chat. I didn't see anything in the chat function. So I'm going to assume that no one else has a comment or a question. Okay. If you do going forward, just speak up or move your hand, but I won't see it if you're not in my screen. We'll move on to item 3, which is the recommended motion. And the recommended motion is this: direct village attorney and staff to work preparing a cost reimbursement agreement with the condition that the school board agrees to pay for the village attorney's time up to $2,500 for preparing the cost reimbursement agreement. And just as a sidebar here, the purpose of the cost reimbursement agreement is to require the school district to reimburse the village for all costs incurred in processing the village district's requests for extending water and sewer services to the Fitchburg school site. Everyone okay with that motion?
Yep. Jerry, this is Randy. I'm going to move approval of that motion.
Thank you, Randy. Could I hear a second, please?
Corey will second.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the cost reimbursement agreement. Any final comments or questions on this before we move on? Hearing none?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Jacobson would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. So I'm not certain yet that I want that I'm comfortable with the village extending water and sewer to Fitchburg, essentially, even though it is an Oregon School District building. I am willing to vote yes for this motion because it is just a cost agreement to draft the cost agreement, but I just wanted to put it out there that, you know, we are talking about building infrastructure for a completely different municipality essentially, and that they will see the benefits of that going forward. So as we proceed with these questions or with these discussions, keep that in mind.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? I'll just indicate that I share some of Jenna's concerns regarding building this school where it is, but I too am willing to move forward to investigate this further right now, mainly because, as this motion indicates, it costs nothing for the village taxpayers. Anyone else? We got a motion and a second on the table. Hearing no further questions or comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item 11, which is Chief Pagenkopf's report to the village board. Go ahead, Chief.
Yes, thank you. I want to inform the village board that the president of PLS, he's donated to our agency before, and he's again made a very generous donation to our agency of $5,727. This money will be used to purchase Axon Signal sidearm devices. I've tried to include some photographs of the devices themselves, but essentially they're made by Axon, which is the same company that makes our cameras that sit relatively right above your dominant eye, above your ear. And what this device does is, let's say our officer is not on a call. You saw the ambush of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, the two deputies. They had no time to activate anything. What these devices do is if an officer, any officer within a certain radius pulls their firearm, it automatically turns on the cameras of those officers that are also wearing the same Axon cameras. This is beneficial not only for if the officer forgets or is in a crisis situation and can't hit the camera, but also in many of these situations, they may be injured and don't have the ability to, because they may have only one good hand and can't activate the camera and hold their firearm at the same time. So the nice thing about these is there's no cost to maintain them or to service them. It's literally the purchase to put them on the holster. Does not change the draw with the firearm. I was surprised to see that not a lot of agencies have this, but it's because of the cost. We ordered 25 because we don't know how hard this is going to be on the device itself, carrying it into the front and off to the side of the holster. So one thing that was nice is Axon actually only charged us for 23 and is willing to throw in 2 for free. So this is something I would like to implement with all of our staff as just an extra measure of accountability. And video is just so important nowadays with these sort of incidents. Are there any questions?
Any question? Go ahead. Who is this?
Jacobson.
Okay, go ahead, Jenna.
You had mentioned that it activates the cameras of not just the officer who drew their weapon, but other officers in a certain radius. Did I hear that right?
Yep. It's so it's an option they offer, and you have to. It's their system to do these modifications is really user friendly, but essentially, yeah, you can turn it to the setting, and then I don't know the exact distance, but if they're all on a scene together and within close proximity dealing with the same threat, them pulling their firearm will turn on the rest of the devices. The only way it will not turn on is if the the battery pack itself is not turned on, but most officers have it turned on. The only time they don't is when they're off duty or using the restroom.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone
I had
else
a-
have a, anyone else
Yeah,
have a question?
I've got a question. Peterson.
And who is this?
Peterson.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just curious, how quick does that happen? What's the lag time between it being triggered and sending out the signal and having the other cameras turn on?
Immediate. These are by far the one of the best cameras made, and that's, you know, again why I said that in our last meeting, thanking you guys for making this investment, because I'm watching other agencies who purchased a different sort of camera system, and it's a struggle, because it's not just, you know, when it turns on, but it's also how is it retained, how is it redacted, what's the quality of it during times where it's dark out. So this is by far the best out there. If we were not to have this device, and let's say an officer would have been approached out on foot patrol and suddenly put into a situation, didn't have time to activate his camera, but had to pull his holster, the only way it would still work is once that officer is able to safely do so, they would turn on the camera, activate it, and it's going to go back about 20 seconds. But that's also if they're able to safely do so, if they're not hurt. And to be honest with you, we are all human. So there's a lot of things going on in our mind. And one of the things that they teach you when you have to go to that sort of use of force is breathe, look around, make sure, you know, you understand where any other threats are, and are you safe now to, you know, put your firearm away. So there's definitely a lot of things going on. What's nice about this is I hate to say catch-all, but can be considered that.
Okay. And just a quick follow-up, what is PLS? What organization is that?
Property Loss Services?
Specialist.
Thank you, specialists. I just looked at their truck too. But yes, this is a phenomenal donation. And yeah, just so grateful for it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question for the chief? Okay, hearing none. Again, Chief, congratulations on securing this donation.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everyone on the board appreciates not only PLS's contribution or donation, but your efforts in getting that. So we'll move on to item B. It's the revisions to the current police officer involved critical incidents policy, and we have a recommended motion to approve revisions to current police officer involved critical incidents policy. That's a long title for a policy.
Long policy.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chief.
So really the change comes down to under former Chief Brian Ewell's leadership at the time, our responding agencies for any critical incident where an officer was involved was the Dane County Sheriff's Office and Fitchburg Police Department. And they are both phenomenal agencies. I've been in an officer involved shooting and I had the Dane County Sheriff's Office interview me. It was quite the experience, but they were very meticulous. The reason I feel we need to make the change is just with the current times, and DOJ is investing more in DCI, Department of Criminal Investigation, in investigating these sort of incidents. Another thing that they offer with this change is in early October, they're going to offer through the Department of Justice training for all law enforcement that are having DCI respond to these incidents. So it creates this foundation for any sworn member to know what's coming, what all it entails, what sort of, because they have a very exact process to their investigations. We haven't had any sort of training like that with the Sheriff's Office or Fitchburg Police Department. So I think this will really strengthen us as an agency to make this move. The
Thank
other
you.
agencies that are listed are just, it's kind of a backup. There is, DCI is a very large group through DOJ, but you just never know in that moment what else is going on in the county and the state. So there are, the Dane County Sheriff's Office is listed as one, and also, I forget what they call themselves, but the team. It's just a collection of investigators from various agencies, but ideally it's going to be DCI. And even if DCI says, well, we're going to need some help, it's really turned over to them at that point, and they decide who they want to have involved. I've had several conversations with them in the last 2 weeks. Things slowed down a little bit because of the last Monona incident, but we will be meeting sometime this week to finalize any further training beyond what is set up through DOJ.
Thanks, Chief. And just I'll call the trustees' attention to the fact that all the changes to the policy are highlighted in red for our convenience, and we appreciate that. Anyone have any questions on the policy?
Chief Pagankoff, this is Matt. I have one question for you.
Yep.
Is there, so if this policy change is made, is there anything that happens in terms of an agreement or any other step that you take formally with DCI so that they understand that they are now the primary outside agency and they agree that they will respond if called? Or do you simply make this policy decision and then call them if and when you need to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to get ahead of this. So I've already had several conversations with the director in our area, and she would be the one that we would reach out to respond to these. And I didn't want this to just be a reactionary moment if we had an incident. So I wanted to get ahead. And so they're fully aware that I'm coming to you guys tonight with these revisions and hoping they're approved. And after that, later this week, we're going to work through what else we can do to be proactive in getting our people trained on what this is going to look like. And if there's anything else we need in place that helps DCI. But yeah, then essentially once that's all, we've got that all figured out, then it's just me simply calling and making that request.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have a question for the chief at this time? Chief, are you done with your report?
Yes, on the policy stuff, yes.
Yeah, okay. Then I'll just ask, are there any questions on the changes highlighted in red or any questions about the policy in general? All right. Again, we have a recommended motion to approve the revisions to the current police officer involved critical incidents policy. Would someone care to bring that forward?
Jacobson will make that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Peterson will second.
And we had a second. So we had a motion and a second. Any further comments or discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The changes to the policy are approved. Move on to item C, which is, I'll let the chief take it again.
Yes, so the plan is to order 2 squads in 2021, but with the pandemic and just in general, a lot of companies really, well, I shouldn't say a lot, some companies that were making police squads are no longer making police squads, or they're just not as desired. We obviously like the Chevy Explorer. It's Wisconsin. We can haul more. They're better with the weather, but they take forever because everybody else likes them too. So we are looking to try to order those sooner than we normally have in the past.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone have any questions on that? Very good. I'll just make the comment that if this was a Public Works recommended motion, that Jeff would be driving these vehicles already, so.
It's not fair.
Okay, did we make a motion? And
I'll make the motion.
okay,
Oh, to
we got a
approve.
motion. Would someone care to second that?
Mitchell, second.
Thank you. And we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or further questions for that matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chief, order your squads.
Okay, speed trailer, not so much. I got
You better
struck over the weekend.
Yeah, you better explain what you meant by that.
Yeah. Yes, it was sideswiped by a drunk driver over the weekend. So been a busy weekend.
How fast was he going?
No, I don't think too fast. And we
Can't say. I mean, it was.
yeah,
a
we
speed
were able
trailer.
to make contact with him. So
Good.
Do we need a new speed trailer?
we don't know yet.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, we'll hear about that when you're done reporting on that.
Yes.
Move on to item D now.
So Mike had asked that I kind of give you guys an idea of what Safe Communities is doing to help us with our community. And what I can say for the Oregon Police Department, we participate in the Safe Communities program where we do a disposal of unused medications because they pose a risk to members of the community, the youth, and the environment. And just to show you how successful the program has been, in 2018, we took in 227 pounds of medication. In 2019, we took in about 707 pounds. The reason for such the high spike was we teamed up with Oregon Cares and hosted 2 events that year to take medications in on just two Saturdays. And we took in a lot. So it's a great program.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief on that? Hearing none, the recommended motion for this is to approve donations of $500 in 2020 and $500 in 2021 for Safe Communities. Anyone care to make that motion?
Peterson will make the motion.
Thank
To
you,
approve.
Amanda. Who would like to second?
Mitchell, second.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments on this? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Those donations are approved. And I just want to bounce back to the squad order just for the public information that those are part of the 2021 budget. So it isn't like we just pulled those out of the air. We planned for those and we're just going to get them early. And we'll move on to Chief. You've got an activity report for August.
Yes, and I'll keep this short just to highlight a few things. I've continued every week to attend the Dane County Emergency Management conference calls to get updates as I'm the Emergency Management Director for the village. And that's going well. I attended what's called the 1619 training through the Dane County District Attorney's Office. I think some of you might be aware of this. And it was quite interesting. I worked with the DA's office. I haven't seen some of those DAs in a really long time. I worked with them closely as a detective, and so it was really nice and some interesting information that they taught about African American history and those sort of things. So it was really interesting. We're also really just trying to figure out different ways to help just with the pandemic. So for example, the challenges of checking IDs when buying alcohol. Everybody's got a mask on. I was behind a guy at a grocery store last night where he had a hat on, really dark glasses, and a mask, and he was buying beer. And I couldn't tell if he was 60 or 18. So there's certainly some challenges there. So we were working through those with Oregon Cares, trying to come up with some ideas, some strategies to help our business owners adapt to that. And our set team, our special events team, that's, in case any questions about that, that's for assisting other jurisdictions with protesting and rioting. They were deployed, I believe, several times that month. And as you know, Detective Sergeant Jansen now did attend the fair and impartial policing instructor training. Once we were over the pandemic, we are really going to implement that training within our core agency and move forward with that. Any questions regarding the rest of my activity report?
Go ahead, board. Any questions for the chief? I have one. Go ahead. Go ahead, Corey.
I was just wondering if there are any components of the fair and impartial policing training that could occur, I guess, virtually or until we can meet in person.
Yes, we're looking into that. There's parts of it that are very much more impactful in person, but who knows how long this pandemic's going to go on? You know,
right.
I wish I didn't have to say that, but it's just the case. But we are going to test it out by doing it with our new hire and having Detective Sergeant Jansen work kind of almost using her as a practice to see if this can be stretched into a virtual type training with our staff until we can do it safely in person. So we're gonna start with one and see how it takes out.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question for the chief regarding this? Okay, I have one. I see you coordinated regarding staffing crosswalks for school starting. How do you deal with that in the middle of a pandemic? That's my question.
It's been interesting too, because you have different start times, so it's not your normal school start times. Half of a class is going one time, and then so it's almost as if you need crossing it 4 times a day at times. We've been trying to monitor, are the crossings even being used right now? Most parents are driving their children to school, either A, because they don't want them to ride the bus, B, because they are working from home, or for whatever other reason. So we're just trying to be strategic on where we're putting them and how we're using them. Also, too, what kind of safety protocol we're putting into place for them. Obviously, they're outside, but they're very close to the kids that they have gotten to know over the years crossing. So it's tough for when the little ones run up and want to hug them. I mean, they've created all these relationships. So it's, you know, whether or not they wear masks, if they don't want to wear masks, how far away they should stay, that sort of thing. So it's, we're working really well with the school district on that matter. It's kind of adapting and being able to adjust as needed.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks for the very thorough activity report. Final chance for questions or comments on this from the board.
Congrats on finishing your master's degree.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can actually spend some time with my family.
Anything else before we move on? Thanks for a thorough report, Chief.
You bet.
Okay, item 12, approval of minutes. That's an easy one. I don't see any here. So we'll move on to item 13, which is approval of vouchers. And tonight we have vouchers ready for approval in the amount of $129,046.07. Would someone like to make a motion regarding those?
Jerry, Corey will make a motion to approve those.
Thank you, Corey. Who would like to second?
I'll second. It's Peterson.
Thank you, Amanda. We got a motion and a second, so let's move on to questions. Anyone on the board have a question for staff regarding these vouchers and payments? Okay. All right, then I'll ask one. 5870 Motorola Solutions. It says one Motorola radio for $4,300. Is that right? Crickets. I just hear crickets. Well, go ahead.
Well, I don't know the answer. I just saw paper shuffling, so I
Oh,
figured
okay.
someone's looking it up.
All right. Well, then move on. While it's being looked up, let's move on to
Jerry?
vendor one. Yes. Who is this?
Yeah, it actually, let's see.
It sounds like Lisa.
Yep.
Yes, this is, yeah,
Is that just one radio, or are there more than one for $4,000?
it looks like one radio.
Does that sound
radio
right,
done
Mike and
for
Jeff?
it. It's for the, yeah, it's just for one radio. There's all these other things that go along with the radio when it's purchased.
Which department?
Like,
Lisa?
It doesn't say.
Lisa, you know what department it was for?
it's for the police department.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, it's one radio, but for the police department. I mean, there's a separate charge for all different kinds of things for it, like a microphone jack, the charger. The radio itself is only $2,200.
Wow, lots of add-ons.
Then there's trunking, smart zone operation, TDMA operation,
Okay.
Astro Digital CAI operation.
Undercoding.
So I don't know what they all mean, but it has a lot of things. that
That's
go with
fine. That's fine. As long as you know it's just one radio, I guess well, it's time to move on. Question on item 12198, which is Atlas Business Solutions. And the description is schedule anywhere sub for $600. What is that?
I believe that's me too. Schedule Anywhere is our software we use for our schedule for our officers and all staff.
So is it like a subscription?
It's a program
Okay.
that runs your
Right.
schedule.
Very good. Okay, I don't have any more questions. Anyone else? Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and I believe this will take a roll call vote to approve. Would the clerk please call the roll on this?
Glish,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Follig,
Yes.
Stitch,
Yes.
Jacobson, Horton.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for getting that. So we're on to item 14, or actually, well, we've got the voucher list. Item 14, proclamations and announcement. Are there any board comments? Hearing none, I'll move on to staff comments. We've got a list of upcoming virtual meetings. Mike, do you want to go through those, or anyone from staff want to go through those?
I'll just mention the one upcoming is Wednesday, the joint meeting with the towns, which will be a virtual meeting at 6:30.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from the board? Okay, item 15, communications and miscellaneous business. Item A is a review of the email thread and Oregon Allies Group's appearance at the October 5th Village Board meeting. Any questions or comments about that? It's pretty straightforward. They're going to come in on October 5th and give us their concerns. So item B, and this is preparing a citizen guide for assistance in understanding the roles of village board and police commission as they relate to the oversight of the police department. We've got to recommend a motion to authorize $2,500 to have village attorney Matt Dregney prepare a citizen guide. Chief Pagenkopf, would you like to make a comment on this, please?
Here, this is more, I think, me than Jenny.
Okay. All right.
So Matt and I were going to do this in March and April of this year, and then COVID hit. We realized that more and more, there's a lot of confusion out there exactly what the board's role is and what the police commission role is as far as oversight of the police department. And the League of Wisconsin has this very thick manual that if you wanted to read, would take you weeks to read to understand it. It's a good manual, but it's hard to read. So Matt and I we're talking about doing this back in the springtime, but then, like I mentioned, COVID sort of interrupted it. So we think this would be helpful for everyone, Alice's group, the village board, village residents, even village staff to understand the under state law what the roles are for the board and the commission.
You're correct. It is confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So any questions for Mike regarding that? If not, we'll move on to item C, which is an update of mailing out absentee ballots.
We need a motion on. We need approval of that.
Oh yeah. Again, we had a recommended motion to authorize $2,500 to village attorney Dregney prepare a citizen guide. Would someone care to make that motion?
Oh, sorry, Jerry. Jacobson will make the motion.
Thank you, Jenna. Who would like to second?
I'll second that. Oh.
Okay, who gets the second?
Go ahead, Amanda, take it.
That's fine. Peterson will second. I have a question though before we.
We've got a motion and a second, so you go ahead and ask it.
Thanks. So would this citizen guide include things that citizens are allowed to do under the law? For example, Chief Pagenkopf, you mentioned at the last meeting, I believe, possibly putting together something like that citizens can do if they have, you know, if they want to make sure everything's going smoothly at a traffic stop, but they don't want to break the law, you know, how to do that properly, what they're allowed to do, like, you know, film it with your phone, but, you know, stay out of the way, don't get involved in anything, you know, keep it safe. Like there are things that people can do. Would this citizens guide include things like that?
This is Matt. That's a great question. So I wasn't planning on including information about that type of thing, but you know what I think would be interesting? I was planning on trying to provide information to people. For example, if answer a question like, if you are interested in police department policy and you want to know where to go if you have concerns about policy, you know, where would you direct those concerns? Questions like that. But I think it would be interesting, and I'd certainly be open to it if trustees would like to send me examples of questions that they think citizens might have, such as the one that Trustee Peterson just described that you think would be, you know, useful to address in this guide. The question that you raise is an interesting one, and it's not one that I could answer, that I could address without input from Chief Pagenkopf, but I think it would be interesting to see those kinds of questions, things that I might not think about, but that you would, that citizens would want to know, you know, who do we go if we have a, where do we go if we have a question about this, or what do we do if we want to do this? So I'm open to seeing those questions and trying to figure out whether there is a way to address them in this manual.
Thank you, Matt.
If I could add, I'm sorry, Jerry. If I could add a few things. I'm hoping maybe to get some help from the village board on this. January 6th was when the idea of the Diversity and Inclusion Coalition was like, hey, this is great. Let's try this. It was kind of, I don't know, endorsed. And at the time I was not the permanent chief. And the direction in which it's going, I guess I would love some input from the board as to what the board would like to see the police chief do with this coalition. You know, I tried to educate myself on what that meeting was. At the time I was a lieutenant, so I was actually out talking with the officer we had just sworn in. So I apologize, I missed it. So I watched the YouTube video of the meeting again on January 6th, and Alice had brought to the village board this idea. And I gotta be honest with you, I was just as excited about this. And it was explained in that meeting that this would provide a view of what it's like being a marginalized group living in Oregon. You know, and then she brought up Sun Prairie utilizing a diversity and inclusion group to be given specific tasks and how the city services are meeting those needs. They also talked about, you know, some of these inclusion groups, diversity and inclusion groups working to enrich their communities, provide trainings, cultural events, and to bring information to the community. You know, on May 14th, I was appointed to the permanent chief by the police commission, and about 3 hours later, I attended my first diversity and inclusion meeting via Zoom. I anticipated the meeting to be challenging. I did. These are very strong feelings. These are very difficult topics to talk about, but they need to be talked about. We have to communicate. I have to better understand so that I can try to evolve and help my agency and my officers to evolve. It was indeed an intense meeting where details regarding specific cases our agency addressed were brought forward to me. What did catch me off guard was I was asked multiple times if I would go into an agreement where I would need to meet expectations. And if I didn't meet those expectations, my future as a police chief could be in question. I want to be very clear. I'm not bringing this up to cause any friction, but this email is hanging out there now that Alice sent, and it's attached to this agenda. And it's very important to me that, I mean, you are the leaders of this community. I welcome your input as to what you envision me doing. If I'm not doing something I should be. In less than 6 months as the chief, I've made some improvements and positive changes in relation to these issues. I'm not patting myself on the back. I know I have a long road to go, and this will be a forever traveled road. But, you know, just to remind you, some of these changes we've made is additional de-escalation training, implicit bias training, policy changes related to use of force. We added some fair and impartial policing, the instructor for it. We've also implemented changes to our FTO program. So when new officers come in, that they learn additional de-escalation training. They learn more about implicit bias and the duty to act. I have also been engaging with the community related to these matters by starting to work with the youth center director, Precious. We will be meeting monthly, and the Oregon Area Wellness Coalition, one of the last meetings I went to with Lisa, we brainstormed ideas on cultural events that would help to build a connection between the police department and these marginalized groups within our community. I've also recently joined a subcommittee I've made you aware of, where we're going to work on county-wide police reform standards. There are some of these things we have been able to accomplish at OPD, in addition to me being the emergency management director for the village through a pandemic, running a PD while trying to backfill command staff positions, and addressing other topics such as the SRO. While there's been a lot of work to do overall, I and the rest of the OPD has remained committed to our statement that we will make as many positive changes and will continue to do so as they relate to policing. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. It's a little disheartening to see that instead of collaborating together in the last 6 months to enrich our community, provide training, and plan cultural events, and bring that information back to the village board together, the first step by the Diversity and Inclusion Coalition is to make recommendation by adding measurable metrics to my job description. I have highlighted the accomplishments OPD has made related to equity, bias, etc. in village board meetings, and will be doing so in a well-organized manner in our annual report so that the community can see these changes and additions we've made. For approximately the last 6 months, I've hoped for some feedback from the Diversity and Inclusion Coalition. And I understand this is a process. And in no way am I saying this to put pressure on that group. But, you know, I need to forge ahead and try to do these things on my own then. And that I so prefer to do this together. A position that I hold, and me in particular, have clearly been a focus for this group. I want to be transparent and thought this would be a good time to bring this up, given this is on the agenda and this email's out there. I have some concerns regarding the current intent of this committee in comparison to what the initial intent was for it. Again, I'm not trying to cause conflict, but I think it's worth bringing these concerns to you so that we, especially I, can make every effort to try to accomplish what was originally intended, with this coalition and for the benefit of this community as a whole. I just want to put that out there. As I told you guys, I'm always going to come to you and try to be as transparent as possible. Yeah, open to any questions or concerns. And I apologize, Alice isn't here. I was really hoping she'd be here. And it's just certainly a conversation I can have with her later. But again, that email's sitting out there for the community to see. And I thought it was important to address what we're doing here.
May I comment, Jerry?
Go ahead, Amanda.
I was just going to say, you know, I think this is a good beginning. I don't see a problem with the emails. I think it's people, constituents that are just looking for some form of accountability. And I think we have built that in somewhat to you know, your job description and things like that. But being transparent is important. And I'm not implying in any way that you are not being transparent. I think you're doing a great job, Chief. I'm not taking issue with that at all. I think the community knows that, but there are always ways to improve things that people may not have thought about. I've been guilty of, you know, missing things, and having these discussions in a transparent fashion are important for the community. And I just see this as a continual process. So there are tough conversations to be had, and you know, maybe they need to just be in more open forums and you know, well, I think the community wants to be involved. They want to see the progress that's being made, and we will make progress. So I see this is just a good back and forth trying to get at some of the tougher issues. And I mean, you've had the village board's support in moving forward and making changes. And as far as I'm concerned, you still have it. That's, you know, you're doing fine. Let's just keep lines of communication open and move forward.
Anyone else have some thoughts?
Jacobson would like to share.
I hear someone, but I don't know who.
Sorry, Jerry. Jacobson.
Yes, go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you. So I obviously can't speak to the meeting in which the email refers to, because I wasn't there at that one, but I have gone to the previous DNI meetings, and I understand, Jenny, your desire to have something to, you know, after 6 months to have more to work with. I totally get that. I think what you've been doing so far has been great. I feel like every meeting you're discussing things that you're doing on the diversity, equity, and inclusion front, and not only learning for yourself, but bringing it to your team, and sometimes educating us in the learnings that you have brought. So, I mean, that is fantastic. I can't even say that I've gone through that much change in between each meeting that we have as somebody who's been going to the diversity and inclusion meetings. I think when we talk about the results, wanting results from this group, I think one of the other things that we need to keep in mind is the framework of the fact that it feels like in each meeting that we've had, there's been another incident that the group has to discuss. So although we have talked about specific initiatives, we really haven't, this email is probably the farthest, and from my perspective, that they've gotten on working on any one specific initiative. And again, I wasn't at the conversations, but we spent a lot of time, or there seems to be a lot of time spent digesting some of the things going on nationwide too, which is going to delay some of the things that we're hoping to get done. But I wanted to give you some perspective on that, and then also to share that I do think you're doing a great job on this. It's not easy, and you're right, it's a continual journey, but you know, we're all working on it. So thank you for your effort.
Thank you, Jenna. Anyone else on the
Jerry,
board?
Corey would like to say something.
Go ahead, Corey.
Chief, you know, I don't see this as a you know, kind of a knock or any kind of you know, negative. I think it's always good to kind of know what people are expecting of us. As public servants, I would much rather know what people's perspectives are versus trying to do something and maybe not aiming in the right direction. So, you know, I don't know that that should be focused in a job description. I almost think that maybe annually we should come up with a plan of these are the things that we want to do. And you've shown us that you attack these things and you work on them and you get them done. So everyone is noticing that. I think some of this will just take some time. But I definitely want to make sure that we continue the dialogue and find out, you know, places that we're doing good, but then also places that we maybe are blind to or are not seeing or not putting a focus on. I think that's where we'll make really, you know, good progress if we can, you know, understand those perspectives. So again, maybe it's not in a job description, but maybe, you know, I think maybe a part of this being targeted as a job description is because people want to see lasting change in writing that you know, can't go away. I think people see more permanence in something like a job description. So maybe there's you know, something that we can do to address that, but I think let's continue the dialogue and see, you know, what people are looking for and how we can help achieve the goals.
Thanks, Corey. Anyone else want to weigh in?
This is Matt. I'll just reiterate one more time that if any of you have ideas for things that you think should be addressed in a citizen's guide to policing in the village, please do send them to me, because I recognize that, I mean, I kind of see the world through my own lenses, I guess, and I have certain categories that I put information in, and I might have, there may well be questions or things that people would want addressed in that guide that wouldn't occur to me that we could address. If there are questions that people ask where I don't know that I can get that particular question addressed within this framework, I could let you know, but this is a project that I expect will take a couple of months to complete. So feel free, if you have things that you want addressed, ship it on over to me.
Thanks, Matt. Is this concern something that the police commission should be receiving from the community? Should they be hearing of these concerns?
You're right. That's exactly what the citizen guide is going to talk about.
Okay.
Because
right.
not to cut you off, but that's a great question, because that's exactly what we want to get at, because no, the answer is no. This is a village board discussion.
Very good. Thanks for putting that out there. Anyone else before I babble on a little bit?
Well, I was just going to say, so back to the original question, what is the scope of this citizens guide? Do we want it to include not only the laws, but also some guidelines that citizens can follow? And is Chief Pagankoff maybe willing to put together a list of what you're allowed to do, or what is this going to look like?
So Jerry, can I answer that, please? I honestly, I understand what you're getting at, Amanda, but and maybe we need to do two things. I just think we need to get at this heart of the issue, that the question that Jerry just asked. We need to get that clarified out in the community. So, sorry to cut you off, Matt, but
sure.
I just think we need to be focused when we do the guide at this point.
So strictly, who handles what according to the law?
And the interaction between the commission and the board and the police chief, correct? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the original scope. And so we'll certainly accomplish that. If there are other things you want tackled, we can look at it. I'm not sure we'll be able to get everything in the first draft of this. And there may be some questions that we just can't answer within this kind of project, but we'll do our best.
I really want to get this guide done and get this out in the community. There's just a lot of confusion over this. And I particularly under how Wisconsin treats police departments. And
I think that'd be a great idea. In the meantime, and we've got the allies coming in on the 5th. I'm assuming that guide won't be done by then.
No, Matt and I are looking at probably sometime in November.
So is the 5th just a listening session for the board then, or exactly what is the board role on the 5th?
Well, you go back to Molly's email. What did she say in that email? She said, sorry. This is for Molly. We all work together to strengthen our community. It would be, so they're looking at having a conversation with the board that night, Jerry, regarding the allies' work. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Again, I think I would wait to see what they have to say at the meeting. That's what I would do.
Well, my point is, I'm not sure I want to even respond to any of it, because if I don't want to step on the police commission's toes, if it's really their role to hear and react to this.
It's not, Jerry. It's the village board role.
Okay, very good. Okay. Well,
I mean, I'll just make this really simple regarding the commission hires and fires the sworn personnel in the police department.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of, I mean, they don't deal with policy, ordering squads or anything like that. That's all the village board responsibilities and duties.
That's exactly what we've been doing too.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Anyone else care? Thank you, Mike. Anyone else care to comment on this? You know, I'll just go on to say, I think the chief and the whole staff is doing an excellent job. I'm a lifetime resident of the village, and I think we've got the best chief and staff we've ever had. As far as transparency, I don't know how much more transparent we could be. I mean, our meetings are televised. The old meetings are on file. Our agendas are out there. I don't know how many years of agendas are saved out there. We've got cameras, and the old footage is available. So I guess I'm a little taken back by this. It's like we've got a group here that I'm not clear what their role is, and I'm not clear what their goal, the role and the goal, because while we're elected to do a job, they've just kind of appointed themselves as unofficial auditors of the police department here, which is fine. But I find it very puzzling.
Well, Jerry, I don't think that's, sorry to interrupt you. I don't think that's what she's saying in her email. That's why I purposely put this email. Are you talking about the Ellis's email or the Allies group? We're talking, I mean, right now we're talking about the email from Alice. And basically, she has a sentence in there that says the consensus last night was that we'd like to make a recommendation to the village board, and this is where it gets confusing, or the police commission, for use in the future. So I mean, they're just trying to provide some input. I understand where Jenny's coming from.
We
You should
always
know-
take in, yeah.
And you should
always-
know that, and I made sure
We're all
Alice,
here for input. Yeah.
you should know that Alice knows now, like via an email from me, that Jenny does not have a contract. She's under state law. So
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, we're always available for input.
yep, absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else? On hearing no response, I'll move on to,
Did we vote on that? I don't know if we did. No.
no, okay. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion carries.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I've lost my place.
We are on 15C, absentee ballots.
Thank you for, okay. Who wants to give the update on mailing out absentee ballots for November 3rd?
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, Peggy.
So Katie did a nice outline here, and I'll try and go over it quickly. As mentioned last week, we have about 7,300 registered voters. Last Thursday, we mailed over 3,000 absentee ballots. So we met the statutory deadline with the help of our staff and our election workers. So a big thank you to them. For the safety and well-being of our employees and voters, the village is encouraging all voters to request an absentee ballot. To briefly go over how to register, there are a few options. You can go to myvote.wi.gov. The deadline for that is October 14th at 11:59 p.m. People can also register by mail. The envelope must be postmarked no later than October 14th. People can also register in person during our absentee voting hours, which are October 20th through the 23rd from 7:30 to 4:30 p.m. or 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then again the following week, October 26th to October 30th from 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. Or people can register by appointment and call our main line number at 885-3118. If somebody would want to request an absentee ballot, we again would ask people to go to My Vote. And we are asking people to do that as soon as possible, but no later than October 29th at 5 p.m. That is the statutory deadline. The Village of Oregon homepage has a very helpful 2-minute video. I don't know if anybody's gone out and seen that on how to request an absentee for My Vote. It's actually kind of funny. Another option would be to email Candy Jones at cjones@vil.oregon.wi.us. You must provide your photo ID with your request unless you are an indefinitely confined voter due to age, illness, infirmity, or disability. Another way that you can vote absentee is by stopping in Village Hall during the dates and times that I previously mentioned, last couple of weeks in October. Returning ballots, we're asking people to not wait until the last minute to return ballots. The sooner you can get them back to us, the sooner we can make sure that they are going to get processed. All of our absentee ballots are pre-stamped, so they can be mailed back to us. I know that a lot of people are having a little heartburn about mailing absentees back, so we are also offering to have people place their absentee ballot in our secure black drop box to the south of Village Hall. That is being checked multiple times a day. Ballots must be returned by 8 p.m. on election night to be counted. If anything comes in after that, we are unable to count that. If anybody has any questions, call any time during regular business hours and we will direct people as needed.
Anyone have a question for Peggy? The polling, the in-person voting is going to be done all in the village hall this year, right, Peggy?
Correct. It will be down in the main lobby, and we will be running people through the community room.
Okay. And you've got over 3,000 requests, and I think if my memory serves me, that we've only got about 7,000 registered voters in the village. Is that correct?
Yep, about 7,200 to 7,300. So we're approaching halfway.
Okay.
We might actually already be there.
Anyone else have any questions regarding November 3rd?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the update, Peggy. This is good information. The Oregon Area Progressives has been talking to Jim Ferroli over at the Observer and working on getting a PSA about voting in the paper. So there should be something coming out in the Observer soon, if not this week, next week, about, with some of this information, with deadlines, with the myvote.wi.gov. So we appreciate the Observer putting out that nonpartisan information about voting. That was it.
Thank you, Amanda. Anyone else? Very good. We'll move on to review of net new construction for 2021 budget. Mike, you want to roll through this?
Sure. This is just our net new construction report that we received from the state. It's a little bit less than last year, and I think Lisa and I are figuring it will generate about $120,000 of levy. But what this means is that this is the money we can levy above the state imposed property tax cap. And
Thank you, Mike.
This is based off our growth.
All right. Any questions on the net new construction from the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to item E, discussion and possible action regarding a cost reimbursement agreement with Netherwood Brewing, LLC, and we've got a recommended motion from staff. Approve the cost reimbursement agreement with Netherwood Brewing, LLC. Staff, you want to, is there an overview on this or some discussion that would be beneficial?
I can share a little bit about this. There's no cover memo, just the cost reimbursement agreement, but I believe this is the fourth one of these you've seen in the last few months. This is similar to the cost reimbursement agreement we've done with Lakestone and Habitat and Oregon Parks for some of the ongoing planning work that we're going through with them this summer and fall. So this is for Netherwood Brewing. It's looking to renovate and do some site improvements on 900 Market Street. This is on the northern end of Market Street, kind of a little bit north of and behind Bill's. I think it's actually directly behind the bank and the Oregon Floral area. So similar to the other agreements, where we requested an amount to be held as a deposit, which we've already received, and this amount is $5,000 for the folks doing Netherwood Brewing. So they'll still be billed on a monthly basis for time that I spend, Matt spends, Mike Slavny, any engineering costs, review time, publication costs, things like that will still be billed monthly, but the deposit is held just in case we don't receive those invoices paid on the monthly basis. That amount will be drawn from as sort of a bit of a security blanket for the village to make sure we're able to pay our bills. But this just kind of outlines the work that will be done as part of their review. Again, similar to the other cost reimbursement agreements you've seen the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Elise. Are there any questions for the village planner on this item? Hearing none, would someone care to make a motion to approve the cost reimbursement?
I'll make a motion, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Who'd like to second?
I'll second.
And who was that?
Oh, Jacobson.
Thank you, Jenna. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item F, update from staff regarding reimbursement request for facade grant on 130 North Main Street, which is the pizza pit. Who's going to take that?
I'll take this one again. This
Okay.
is a draft of the memo that I'll be sharing with Lisa later this week. This amount is going to change slightly. I just received one more invoice from him for some exterior work that was done. But back in March, right at the beginning of COVID, Mike White came in and requested funds for facade grant. You may have seen most of that work. I think all that work has already been done, but he does plan to do a phase later and finish the brickwork on the side and the rear of the building. And per our facade grant program, he's eligible to receive up to 25% of the project cost, up to approximately $5,000 per side. So you all approved a total request of $14,522.56, and based on all of the invoices, again, this amount will change, but it'll probably be around $10,000 that we will be able to reimburse him. So we're just receiving all those invoices and double checking them. And as soon as we receive everything, I'll review with Lisa, and then we'll be able to cut him the check to reimburse him for those costs.
Thank you, Elise. And it looks very nice too, I thought. I don't know. The other trustees
new
have,
signs look great.
have any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, I believe we have a motion, don't we?
Yep.
I think this was an FYI, right?
Yep.
Oh, it's just an FYI. That's
Yep.
correct.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item G, and item G is the a request to execute another addendum to Dane County 2020 Purchase of Service Agreement to support the meal program at Ziggy's. And staff has a recommended motion to approve another addendum to Dane County 2020 Purchase of Service Agreement. Would someone care to bring that motion forward?
I'll move, Jerry. Randy?
Thank you, Randy. Would someone bring up a second?
Peterson will second.
Thank you, Amanda. We got a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 The POS for Ziggy's is approved.
Rachel didn't even get to talk.
Oh, Rachel, did you want to talk?
It's very straightforward, no need.
Okay, well, we'll let you talk anyway if you want to.
No need, thank you.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Sorry. Move on to item H, which is a discussion of possible action regarding well number 5, drum scale replacement. And we've got another recommended motion to approve the contract with Ultranex Control Systems for 2 new chemical scales totaling $13,300 for well 5. Who would like to bring that forward?
Peterson will make that motion.
Thank you, Amanda. And someone please second that.
Randy, a second.
Thank you, Randy. Jeff, would you like to give a little background on that? How are the scales? Are they working okay?
Well, we haven't bought them yet.
Oh,
boy.
You got a new policy now.
Well, you know, forgiveness does not run very deep in this world, does it? No. These are we replaced a few a couple years ago, I think, at well number 3 and also at well number 4. These are just they're basically floor mounted scales that we use to track our chemical addition into the water system, both for the chlorine and the fluoride. And so the existing ones are in need of replacement, and we had budgeted it for in our 2020 budget and capital budget for that. And it comes out of actually just fund balance.
Thanks for the very appropriate report, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions from the staff or from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now you can buy them, Jeff.
Thank you. I haven't
Item I,
bought them yet.
item I, discussion and possible action regarding the Mary Hill 5th edition, the acceptance of the public improvements. And our recommended motion is to accept public improvements for Mary Hill number 5 edition development, with the exception of the storm well management ponds. And someone please bring that motion forward.
So moved, Jerry.
Thank you, Randy. Would someone please make a second?
Peterson will second.
Thank you, Amanda. We got a motion and a second. Staff have any discussion on this?
No, this is just pretty straightforward. That Jim's finished his fifth edition phase in the public improvements, including the roadways. So we'll be plowing those this next year.
Why not include the stormwater management ponds?
We don't include the stormwater management ponds because those are accepted per the development agreement at a later date. Usually it's at 80% of the of the subdivision being occupied. So they maintain them through most of the construction, as they'll probably need to be cleaned out before we accept responsibility of them.
Okay.
Yep. Pretty normal.
All right. Any questions or comments from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
The improvements are accepted. Item J, Jeff, tell us about the material in this crosswalks.
Yeah, this is just, I don't know if you remember, one of the alternative bid items that we did for the Park and Janesville intersection was the idea of this, we'll call it like thermo bonded plastic type crosswalk materials. And it's just, it's a neat process. If you've ever driven through Sauk City on your way up on, what is that, 1218, you'll see it in their crosswalks. It's very vibrant, very easy to detect. I think it's, it really brings motorists' attention to it. The neat thing about it is this is something that is actually bonded into and below the top surface of the asphalt. So the plows go right over the top, and it's heated into there, so it becomes actually part of the asphalt surface. It's just, it's kind of a neat process. It does cost more money. Corey and I were talking about that before. They used it when he was working, I know, up in Fitchburg. And it's a nice process. It costs a little more, but I think for a situation like this, where we have an intersection with a lot of traffic, for my guys to get out there and paint every other year to freshen up the crosswalks, or even every year, it's just more dangerous. So this is something we're trying. And I just want to kind of share this with you because I know that, this is an extra cost that you had approved for these on this project. And I invite you to kind of go out and take a look at it. The signals are not up yet. Those are still coming in the next, hopefully, 2 weeks.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. Sorry, Jerry, I should have seen that you were not back at, let's see what I want to talk about.
No, that's okay.
White. They go against the black asphalt. They're in a
You talk about
square rectangular pattern. And we're back.
I have a question for Jeff, actually.
Yes.
That's a new pattern within a crosswalk. Is it real obvious to people who haven't seen these before that is a crosswalk?
Yes. Yeah, I think if anyone's driven through it, it's very eye-catching. And it's not a new pattern for crosswalks. It's just something new for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, you've mentioned you've seen that in other places.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Any other comments on that? Very good. We'll move on to K, which is the discussion and possible action regarding the loader grapple bucket. And the recommended motion is to approve the purchase of a 4-yard grapple bucket from Airing Equipment in the amount of $17,150. Motion, please.
Corey will move approval.
Thank you, Corey. And a second, please.
Stitch will second.
Thank you. I didn't hear who that was, but thank you.
Stitch.
Did you say Stitch?
Yeah, Luke Stitch.
Okay, Luke, thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Go
just
ahead,
real
Jeff.
quickly. Yeah, this is a piece of equipment. We actually had intended to buy this when we bought the loader 3.5 years ago. And it was an oversight because the bucket that was provided at that time was not correct. And we decided we would wait and see how much we would use it and need it. And truth of the matter is, now that we've entered into this contract to have our brush pile ground twice a year, we're using it a lot more, and we could use it on some of these tree removals and everything, because we supply the manpower and our loader to help load the grinder while it is here. It helps reduce costs for the village by doing that. And I think our guys like it because they can kind of keep tabs on what's being ground up and everything. This is just basically it's a large bucket with big old teeth on it. As you can see, it's hydraulically activated teeth and allows you to grab a nice big old chunk of brush and stuff and be able to load that into the hopper. We've been borrowing Veronas, and I don't like to get on too much of a long borrowing plan because there's wear and tear on theirs.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions? Hearing none, I believe we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved.
Thank you.
And item L, discussion of possible action regarding Public Works uniform service contract renewal with UniFirst. And the recommended motion is to approve the contract with UniFirst for Public Works uniforms for a contract duration of 36 months with pricing fixed throughout the 36-month contract period. Take it, Jeff.
Well, you need a motion and a second first,
Oh,
right?
Yeah, let's thank you,
Second.
Randy.
Fry
Thank you,
Peterson.
Amanda. Got a motion. Now we got a motion and a second. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you remember, I brought this to our last meeting and there were some questions because I think Corey saw that, it was a 60-month contract and whether they were going to be fixing it for 60 months or if they'd try to really jack up the prices after the 3-year fixed price contract. You see, I sent them an email just asking, what would they like to honor, and they were fine honoring it. And I actually feel better with this. It's a 3-year fixed price contract, and you can see we've made the changes to that in the contract, and I would recommend approval of it now.
Any questions for Jeff? I don't hear any, so we'll ask for the vote now. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, item M. Discussion and possible action regarding West Netherwood Road and Cusick Parkway stormwater improvements. And this is the request to advertise to bid, and the recommended motion is to authorize Public Works to advertise for bid the West Netherwood Road and Cusick Parkway stormwater improvement project.
So moved, Jerry.
Thank you, Randy. And someone bring forward a second, please.
Corey will second.
Thank you, Corey. We've got a motion and a second. So Jeff, do you want to give a little background on this?
Yeah, I think it's just a good little, Elise, if you can get that diagram up, I'm going to make my screen a little bigger so I can see a little better.
There's also a really nice memo in the packet that explains it quite well.
Always. So what we're looking at here is obviously Cusick Parkway. I don't know if Elise, if you can move Cusick Parkway there, and then Netherwood Road. And we've got this pond over here. We've got a lot of water coming from the west from Lake Barney. So we're intercepting that in a new pipeline that'll go under Cusick Parkway. Right there. Yep. New. And then that is going to tie in, go now straight north and south. Nope. Go down. Sorry, we should have practiced this audio visual. So yes, a new pipeline that goes around the pond and then eventually discharges to a new ditch that would be, thank you, Vanna. And then into a ditch that's along the south line of the roadway, and then that will turn into the Lerner lateral, which will then carry it, south and down into the Badfish Creek. And we're also making some improvements to the pond to be able to add to freeboard. If you notice that pond, I don't believe that pond was ever really, it's just not very, it doesn't have not much capacity at all. And we're gonna try to intercept all the water really coming out of that pond will now go south across the road and not towards that bike path that's right there. And then the last item of this, which is probably the first item that'll be constructed, right now there are some culverts that are over near Josh Belo's property down there to the east, yes, or a little farther. At least, yeah, right there. There's some culverts. There's some culverts that are down near there that are failing, and the most critical aspect is really getting those culverts replaced this year. Seeing as how this project, as you know, has kind of had some delays due to some permitting, wetland permitting and that type of thing. What we want to do is get it out on the street. We want to get it awarded, and then we're going to work with the contractor to see how much we can do with what kind of weather window we have this fall. And we'd like to be able to get as much done so that when we get into spring, we can be trying to get this in, hopefully before we have, you know, problems and we have to pump again. I'm not saying we won't have to pump again next year because it's just taken longer to get this permitted and through and everything. But I think we're there, and this is the opportunity now that we go out, and I'm just seeking approval to advertise this project. And then once we advertise and close the bids, we'll bring it back to you for approval of the contract.
Very good.
Yep.
Looks like a great plan. Any questions for Jeff? Any comments? Go ahead, Corey.
Jeff, it looks like some of the areas of work extend beyond the rights of way. For instance, of Cusick Parkway, the end section and grading go beyond our rights of way. Do we have easements for doing that work there?
We're working with the family over there because this is a very beneficial project for them. We're going to work with them. We'll probably get I don't know if we'll get just an email authorization. It's very little. I mean, the end wall and everything is within the right of way and property over there. There might be some very minor grading outside of there, but we've been working with the family over there on this project, and I don't anticipate any problems with them giving us approval to be able to do that grading, minor grading over there.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Anyone else have a question for Jeff?
Jenna has a question.
Go for it, Jenna.
Thanks. You mentioned the replacing the failed culverts and the other issues. Will that help? I'm assuming that'll help the water issues around Mr. Vila's home, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, exactly. Actually, that's a very good point, Jenna. You can see I've actually pushed those culverts farther to the west of where, go over to the right, at least those culverts that are way over to the right. I've pushed them from near the Bilo house about 100, 150 feet farther to the west, just to encourage that water farther away from his home as well.
Jeff, will we have to close the road to open up the road to put those culverts in?
Absolutely.
And do you know when that will be? Yeah?
No, not yet. Not until we get a contractor hired. And I honestly, I think it's going to have to be late this fall because I'm counting my days on those culverts. If you drive over that, you can feel it. You can feel it starting to sink all the time.
And that's why I bring it up. I've been feeling that too. So. Okay.
Jerry, Corey has one more question.
Go ahead, Corey.
Jeff, on the north side of Netherwood, are you going to ditch to the low point where the current culverts are at to get the water to those?
Yep. I gave that comment to the engineers prior to the final review.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, Jeff, I assume you're done with your report?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And I assume then that Elise is done assisting you with your report.
Yes. But you'll now need to vote on the motion.
Yes, we do. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approving this bid? Aye. Motion carries. Item N, discussion and possible action regarding the Town of Dunn request for load limit signage in the village. And there's a great memo in the packet regarding this, but I'm going to read the memo or the motion. Recommended motion is to direct the Director of Public Works to respond to the Town of Dunn denying the request to place Highway B highway signage on East Netherwood Road and notify them that we will not support classifying Schuster Road as a Class B highway. Someone care to bring that motion forward, please?
I'll make that motion. Oh,
Thank you, Amanda. Would someone please second?
I'll second, Jerry.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay,
Got a motion. Go ahead, Jeff.
So this is a touchy subject for me, if you can't tell from my memo. I included the article from the, I think this is from the Towns Association or the League of Wisconsin Municipality Towns or something, but what you can see in that memo is that in general, and this is throughout the state, towns are not investing enough money into their roadways. And when you have a time where your first line in a report is towns are able to reconstruct a mile of roadway every 371 years, there's nothing in this area that's 371 years old, you know. So the long and short, when you look at their maintenance schedule and everything like that, it's tough. I mean, and that's why obviously taxes in towns are quite a bit cheaper than villages, because we have a lot more infrastructure that we have to take care of and that we do take care of. All that being said, one avenue that towns have taken is to impose weight limits and load limits on their roadways. The lower loads definitely allow longer life of their roadways. There's no doubt about it. It just makes sense. However, you know, and in the town's argument is that, well, it forces then these heavy loads to go on the county highways, which also end up being our roads as well. We really don't do load limits in the village just because we recognize that, you know, everyone uses roads. Town people use our roads, county people use our roads, our village residents use our roads. And when we build our roads, we're building them to a full H20 load, you know, permitted. It's called an H20 load, but it's a 20,000 pound axle load. So, you know, our philosophy is let's build roads correctly and let's build them for that kind of load criteria and, you know, maintain those roads. This has been a request by the town of Dunn. They want to, they're changing, that's Rutland Dunn Road out there to a Class B highway. And they just really, they wanted us to put signage up over kind of near Walgreens warning of a Class B roadway ahead. They'll still sign it once it gets to their roadway, but I just, selfishly, I just didn't feel like supporting this.
Questions or comments for Jeff?
Jerry, I have a question.
Go ahead, Corey.
Jeff, I agree with you with not wanting to post our roads. However, you know, I am a little bit sympathetic to the budget constraints that towns have, and just in being a good neighbor, you know, being willing to put up the posted limits ahead sign. I'm wondering, did Hardy actually indicate that he wanted us to install those? And, you know, to me, if we would he be open to supplying and installing the sign and maintaining the sign? Because if that's the case, we don't have any money, you know, put out, we wouldn't have any enforcement, and I don't really see any issue with that.
Yeah, no, he did specifically say that they would provide us the sign, but we would have to install it and maintain it. I don't know, like, you know, my opinion on it.
Okay.
Anyone else care to weigh in?
So
right.
I want to weigh in, Jerry. Sorry.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So as a former truck driver, I always really appreciated knowing well in advance when road conditions or rules or whatever were going to change. And I do see this as something that's beneficial for not having people who drive larger vehicles be put in a position where they have to turn around on our roads in some place really not convenient to do that to avoid breaking the law. So I'm a little torn here. You know, putting it up right where that starts for the town of Dunn, it's not a lot of notice. So
Well, they'll,
I mean,
they'll be
I'm
able to go up Schuster Road and they won't have to turn around. They'll just have to reroute up to Schuster Road. So there won't be any like turning around at that point. That'd be my comment on that for that location.
Well, would there be signage for, well, yeah, I guess I don't know how quickly Google and stuff these days updates their routes. I just remember smartphone days having to look at a map and figure out a route, but I mean, maybe it's different now, but you know, notice is generally a good thing. I feel like Walgreens might be a way too early place to place the sign. Maybe if they can turn on Schuster Road, the sign should go immediately after Schuster Road. Of course, that's probably town of Dunn. I don't know. Just notice is good is all I'm saying. And while if they're open to installing and paying for and maintaining whatever the sign, I'd be open to placing it or allowing them to place it in a village location, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, when other people's stuff is put into our area, there's always a question of, okay, well, if somebody hits it, who's going to fix it, who's going to maintain it, that kind of stuff. We always have, this is funny because we always have this because the one sign that ever gets hit is the one right at the T intersection there at Schuster and Rutland Dunn Road. Usually it's someone coming straight south, or they slide right through the intersection and they take those signs out. And I believe those are done, but it always takes kind of digging into some stuff to remember, okay, who's responsible for those. But you know, whatever you guys would direct, you know, this is not a hill to die on by, you know, obviously, but.
Anyone else care to weigh in?
Jenna.
If not, we've got a motion. I'm sorry.
Jenna would like to say something.
Go ahead, Jenna.
I just wanted to say I agree with the others about putting the sign in. It seems like the neighborly thing to do. I'm less inclined on the Schuster Road change. You know, I have to give some more thought about that because, yeah, like to Amanda's comment about, or I guess Jeff, your comment that they could turn around on Schuster Road. Well, if we change that, then they wouldn't be able to turn around on Schuster Road, and are we creating more issues? So I'm okay with the sign, not as okay with the Schuster Road change.
I will say that load limits in the town of Oregon have directly affected the village and our developers for forward development out there on cost because of the routes that trucks have had to take because of load limits that were imposed on Netherwood Road. And that's, you know, that's the other thing we have to think of. I mean, it's always easy to say, okay, yeah, just go ahead. But when you start looking at routing or your, you know, the I call them ancillary costs here or what was it? I can't think of the name. Anyways, other costs associated with it, you know, do affect our developers and everything like that. And that's, I mean, I got a call maybe 2 years ago. The town of Oregon had reported the forward development. I think it was Capitol Underground trucks, and they had a county police officer out there citing people. And as a result, they were going to have to come through, I think, on C and up through Bergamont and otherwhere. So, you know, it's, I don't know. I just feel like we don't put restrictions on town people using our roads. I think it's kind of silly they put restrictions on you know, their roads.
I agree that that's the case, but is us not putting a sign up going to stop them from putting a weight limit on that road?
No.
Then if it's going to change, I feel like it's the right thing to do to alert motorists of the change before that change hits. But I don't think we should be paying for it or installing it or maintaining it. That's, yeah.
And we surely don't want to just create an agreement for a long-term maintenance agreement for a single sign. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But, you know, so just so you know, if we do this, more than likely we're taking over the sign. I mean, that's the way I always kind of assume it, because whether I'll remember it 5 years from now or 10 years from now, or whoever takes my position at, you know, when I'm dead and gone,
Okay.
They won't remember that.
Okay, Jeff, thank you.
You're welcome.
Someone say something? Okay, we got a motion and a second on the table.
Well,
let's take care of that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute. The motion, if it's as in the packet, I think I made the motion, and I don't. Are we making a motion to deny the request?
Yes.
Outright?
Yes, that's what the motion was.
Okay, then I say nay.
Okay, now that's legal. You can make the motion and say and not vote for it. So is everyone else a yes then?
I vote nay.
So we've got 2 no's.
I said yes. Randy said yes.
And I say yes. Jenna, where are you?
Nay.
I didn't hear you.
Nay.
And Luke's, where are you?
Just said yes.
Okay, so it's 3-3 and it dies.
Motion fails, yep.
Jerry, I would like to make a motion.
Go for it, Corey.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the town of Dunn installing a sign at their expense and taking upon future maintenance responsibility.
I'll second that motion.
And where would that sign be located, Corey?
I think that's for our Director of Public Works to coordinate with the town.
Is that something you're willing to do, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to install a sign. And I assume it's
install it straight.
It doesn't have to be in English either.
No, that's fine.
So we got a motion and a second to install a sign, and I assume you're going to put it up, in the town of Rutland.
No, it'd be in the village. It would be in the village along Netherwood. My gut feeling is it'll be somewhere between the low point there where the drainage channel goes through and Walgreens, somewhere around there. We can find a spot.
Okay, and I think I'm going to call for a roll call vote on this, so I don't have to ask.
Amanda has a question.
Yeah, well, not a question. I was just going to say, you know, my concern is that with this fresh change, we have a sign, so they can install it, they can put it up. If a few years from now somebody takes it out, it's up to them whether they want to put it back up again, because maybe by then local traffic people will know that that's a Class B road, and there won't be a need to alert the drivers anymore. So that would take care of that problem. Just throwing it out there.
Okay, and I doubt that any future board will remember that, but we'll move forward.
We'll put it on a stainless steel post so it lasts 371 days.
Till a truck hits it.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Horton,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Glish,
No.
Bollig,
No.
Sitch,
No.
Peterson,
Yes.
So that motion dies. So I think we're gonna just have to,
I'll just tell them that you know,
we tried and it died.
yeah.
We had the
We
most
tried both ways.
controversial vote ever.
Yeah. Yeah. If this was for millions of dollars, we'd have no problem with it.
I would
Over
only
time.
ask,
Oh,
since
boy.
since we're discussing it, do you even talk about the Schuster Road?
What's there to talk about?
Well, whether or not we would, I mean, whether or not the village board would support changing that into a Class B road, although from the way it's kind of been looking, it might go to a 3-3.
I think that was part of the whole motion, Jeff, wasn't it? That we just voted on.
That's the second
I think it
one.
was part of the whole thing.
The second one was just about the sign though. The first one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
it's up to you guys.
we tried and it failed. And
Okay.
if President Carpenter wants to bring that back when she's here and there are, you know, we've got an odd number of trustees, then we can take it up again.
I
Right.
agree. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, for what? For nothing, right?
Okay.
Item O, discussion and possible action declaring former village phone equipment as surplus. And we've got a motion to declare former phone equipment as surplus. If someone would please make that.
so moved, Jerry.
Thank you, Randy. A second, please.
Peterson will second.
Thank you, Amanda. We got a motion and a second. Anything you want to say, Jeff?
No, these are not my, I am thrilled that we're getting rid of the phones, and I think I speak for every employee in the village.
Okay. Well then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was too easy. Item P, discussion of possible action regarding Delta Dental plan change for 2021. And we've got a recommended motion to approve Delta Dental employer application, the PPO Plus Premier. Boy, I wouldn't want to say that several times fast. Ultra Savings Plan, quote number 000815777, beginning January 1st, 2021. And there's a schedule.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Ditch second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And who wants to take item Q? Anyone on staff?
Jerry, we're still looking for one member to be on the fire district joint board.
Okay, you can contact
Me.
Village Administrator Mike Grace.
Yep.
Okay. We've got no reports of committees. We've got minutes not requiring action from the library board meeting on August 12th. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. And we've got a list of future agenda items there for your review at your convenience. And item 21, a motion, please.
I move to adjourn, Jerry.
And
Second.
please someone, and we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks, staff.